Okay, good night of Shabbos. We're up to Daf Ayin Tes. Just to segue into the Daf, we saw Machlokes by Angaria. We had if the king goes ahead and takes the takes the rented chamar or donkey, whatever it was, and you could say Ay Shechal Lefanecha. We had another brayso that said he has to get a new one. We answered according to Rav, one was taken where you're going to return it. That's what Havish Shechal Lefanecha, because the king only took it temporarily. The brayso that says you have to give a new one is where the king took it permanently. And Shmuel said it depends. It was derech halichasa, the way you're going, or like we had Rashi, we had the Raks Pshat, if we left it outside, and that was enough gemina between according to Shmuel. Okay, so then we had a stira. We said if the animal you rent a chamar and the animal loses his eyesight, it goes crazy. But on Garyu, you chayiv to give what? A new chamar. You have to give a new chamar. And we said we can't give the teretz to Shmuel because of Shimon ben Elazar. Because of Shimon ben Elazar gave that teretz. So let's start. So Shimon ben Elazar made this derech. So we had a stira. So Shmuel said I could hold like Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Let's start off Iba Yasema. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up on Ayin Ches Amid Beis. 5 lines up, Ayin Ches Amid Beis. Iba Yasema Kula Reb Shimon ben Elazar. The whole braysos of Shimon ben Elazar, the Chsui Mechsor. In other words, there are not two opinions in the brayso. There's one opinion, and we just have to fill in the missing words. V'hachi Ketani. Hasoicher es hachamar v'hivrika. If you rent a chamar and it goes blind, or in the status, or it goes out of its mind, so you'll have a blind donkey or a crazy donkey, but you'll have a donkey. Mesa, if it's a dead donkey, Shinasis Angaria, or it's taken away by the king. Chamar. If it's taken away by the king, that you have to provide a new chamar. Is shaloi b'derech halichasa. If it was taken shaloi b'derech halichasa. Either what you didn't leave it outside, according to the Racha, according to Rashi, it was taken on the way you weren't working. If it was taken the way that you're going, or taken when you left it outside. Because this is now that Rabbi Shimon Elazar, this is the Pirish. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Aimer in b'derech hilucha nitla Aimer loy harish chalafanecha. V'im loy chayiv lahamal lechamar. Okay, so that's the way we say that the brayso that's speaking that you chayiv to new chamar is where it's not derech halicha. Fred Gemara umi matzis mukbus like Rabbi Shimon Elazar the reisha v'katani reisha sleiches hachamar the right. Someone goes ahead and rents a donkey, and it goes and it loses its eyesight like the shtatza. I'm allowed to shechal fenecha. V'ilu Shimon Elazar hasleiches hachamar lirchayv aleha v'vrika ishnestata chayiv lahamer lechamar. So it says we had one kinech over here. Here you rented the chamar to ride on it, and it lost its eyesight or it lost its mind. It says you have to provide it a new donkey. And on the other hand, you just said before that harish chalafanecha. But again, we added to ride. Amar Rabba Baravuna lirka v'la shiny. To ride on it, it's different, right? If to ride on the donkey, then what? Then it's different because maybe you'll fall off the donkey. The donkey can't see, or the donkey's out of its mind, and you're riding on the donkey. Then you have a problem. Rashi says, Shema tipol tachtav b'gesher, maybe it's going to fall by the bridge. He's going to throw you into one of the holes. So to ride on it, you got to make sure you have a healthy donkey that can see. If you rented a donkey to go ahead and transport glass kalim, if the chamor loses its eyesight, loses its mind, you'd have to provide a new donkey, because again, anything that's fragile that the donkey has to be able to see. But if it's not fragile, cargo, then not. Amar Rab Ravuna, Amar Rav. You go ahead and you hire a donkey to Richa. Again, this was the transportation. Like when we in this day and age, we sit, riding a donkey. It's like I tell you, call an Uber. That's the way they did. So you go ahead, you hire a donkey to ride on it. So you hire to take you to Buffalo, and somewhere in Ichves, on the way in Albany or Binghamton, right? Binghamton's on the way to Buffalo, and Binghamton it breaks down. So half the way to Buffalo is Binghamton. I'm not sure, it could be, and it breaks down. So what do? You pay the guy for the half the way. You charge you X amount, and now you go ahead. What? You pay him. He's got a dead donkey, and now you're going to go ahead and continue your journey. And all you have is a complaint. Now, what exactly is the case over here? If it's able to what, you can go ahead and rent another one and continue your journey. Tarumis maya vidite. Why do you have any tarumis? Right? And if it's not shchayach to rent anything, igra boy lemesavla. You have to get to Buffalo. He strands you in Binghamton. You're going to pay him for what? For Binghamton? Makes no sense, right? Bishlema, if you can rent another another Uber in Binghamton, and now it's going to be half the price. So you pay him the price from New York City to Binghamton, and then you're going to pay the second guy from Binghamton to Buffalo. But if you can't rent, and now you're stuck in Binghamton, I'm going to have to pay you for that? It makes no sense. It says, you can't go ahead and find a rental, and nonetheless, you have to pay him. Because you can say to him, if you had to come to Binghamton, wouldn't you have to pay me? Now, what are you going to say? I got to get to Buffalo. It doesn't do me any good to be in Binghamton. It doesn't seem like, what kind of svar is that? If you had to get to Binghamton, you'd have to pay me. But I don't have to get to Binghamton. I have to get to Buffalo. Maybe I have to sell my goods in Buffalo. There's a convention there where I'm going to sell stuff. I have to get there. So let's see Tosfos here, guys. Here the kasha. What kind of time is this? The Balach Hamar tells the rider, listen, true, you hire me to get you to Buffalo, but I can't do that because my donkey's dead. If you hired me to get me to Binghamton, wouldn't you have to give me money? And the Gemara says that's a winning taina. Now we're asking on that, what kind of taina is that? I have to get to Buffalo. I don't have to get to Binghamton. So Tosfos answers the kasha. Let's see top Tosfos. Ilu ad hocha boyis lemesi lav igra boy lemesiv. Ema. The hashtemia the lav ad hocha boy lemesi. He doesn't have to go to Binghamton. Lama yitin leschar. Why should you give schar for a place you don't have to go to? It's like you take a trip to Eretz Yisrael, they leave you off in Spain. You're going to pay him for the trip to Spain? You don't want to go to Spain. When it says that you can't find another Uber driver to rent, in other words, you could find, but not at the price that this guy gave you. A little bit more, yimsa lischor, you could. Right? In other words, you could find. So if just say the trip from New York to Buffalo for brevity's sake was $500, and now you get to what to Binghamton, you should get for $250, but it's going to cost you $275. So there's no way in the world you're getting from New York City to Buffalo at $275. So you won nena from what he took you to Binghamton. Just you're going to have to cost a little more to get you from Binghamton to Buffalo. That's what Tosfos says. You give him the $250 that he took you to Binghamton. He doesn't have to go ahead and give you a discount. In our scenario, he doesn't have to go ahead and make up the $25 difference from $250 to $275. Even do honest, since he's an honest. Since he's an honest, he doesn't make it up. In other words, you were going to a convention in Buffalo to sell T-shirts, right? You could sell those T-shirts in Binghamton, so you're not taking a loss either. Okay? The bottom of they're going to bring to Binghamton. In other words, it's not pshat, you're stranded in Binghamton, guys. If there was nothing for you in Binghamton, and you could not get from anyone to take you from Binghamton to Buffalo, you wouldn't have to pay. Says Tosfos, the case is speaking where from you were marviach from getting from New York City to Binghamton. Why? Because now you're going to pay you're going to pay from Binghamton to Buffalo, albeit at a higher rate, and the Bala Chamor does not have to make up the difference of that $25 in my scenario from 250 to 75 because he wasn't honest. Guys, good? Great. I think that Tosfos, you need that Tosfos, or else it's really a starker kash. Now, Hechidami, what exactly was the case? Id amalei chamar stam. If he said, "I'm renting you a chamar," hachayv lahamad loy chamar acher. In other words, you rented a chamar. You didn't rent this chamar. You rented a chamar. So if you said chamar stam, right? If you said chamar stam, then l'chayra you shouldn't have to pay the way from Binghamton to Buffalo. He said, "I'm renting you a chamar." He has to provide a chamar. Okay. The amalei, and if it's speaking in a case the amalei where the renter told the rentee told the renter, right? This particular chamar. Now, im yesh b'dameha, this dead donkey, you sell it and it has value. Likach, to go ahead and buy another chamar, right? So why don't you do that? So what does he have to pay? Yikach. In other words, you said this chamar is going to go ahead and take you. So memanav shach. Guys, eye contact. You told me the case the following. He gets you to Binghamton. What's the din? Pay him half his wages and go on. We want to know what's pshat. When you went ahead and contracted this fellow, did he say chamar stam or chamar zu? If you said chamar stam, a regular chamar, he has to go ahead and provide a chamar. If you said this chamar, and this chamar is dead, so why do you have to pay? Let him sell this chamar and buy another chamar. He sell the carcass of this chamar and buy another one. So it's like this case is speaking, but this the veil of the chamar is not enough to buy another chamar. The veil of this chamar is not enough to buy another chamar. And therefore you have to pay, you have to wait. However, what if yesh b'namel lischar, you could go ahead, sell this nevela, and rent another chamar, then yischaloi. V'im yesh b'namel lischar, then yischar. Rav l'tamei damarav loy mechal yakarna. Okay, so now, so why the Gemara is asking? So good, I don't have enough money from the carcass to buy a chamar. But l'chayra, I do have enough money from the carcass to rent another chamar. Again, I'm going analyzing this case, right? You're telling me the guy is off the hook, and you continue your journey and pay. Why is this guy off the hook? If he said chamar stam, he's still on the hook. If he said chamar zu, he should pay the nevela and provide you with a donkey. And for the Gemara, the nevela is not going to go ahead and provide a donkey. Okay, so Fred the Gemara, so go ahead and rent, take the chamar, sell it and rent a donkey. Okay, now, if he would do that, just as an introduction to the next sugya, the Bala Chamor would be left with nothing. He would be left with nothing. He gave you a donkey. He rented you a donkey. He thought he would get a donkey back. The donkey drops dead, right? He's got a dead donkey. If he sells it, he has the money for the donkey. If he takes the money for the donkey and rents you a donkey to continue from Binghamton to Buffalo, he has nothing. That's called in the trade Kalir Karna. The Karen is consumed. We had it in Baba Kama Daf Gimel. Kalir Karna, it's consumed. So now, Fred Gemara Kasha, good, you don't have money from the dead carcass to buy a new donkey, but you do have money from the dead carcass to go ahead and rent. Says the Gemara, if that's the case, go ahead and rent the donkey. Says the Gemara, Rav L'tamei, the Amar Rav, Loi Machlinan Karna. We don't go ahead and use up all the Karen. And if we're going to use the money from the carcass to rent, you're going to use up all the money. The Itmar, Hasoiches Achamar, Umeslei Bechatzi Aderech, you rent a chamor and it dies on the way, Amarav, if you have in its value to buy another donkey, yikach. Lischar, if they have in its value to rent, al yischar, you do not rent. Ushmul Amar, af lischar yischar, even to rent, you would rent. But my kamifli, what's the svaras machlokes? The Rav says you don't rent, and Shmuel says you do rent. Rav Sava loy machlin on karna, we don't consume the keren. If you're going to rent the donkey, it's out the window. Shmuel Sava mechalin on karna. Shmuel says no, you could be machlin on karna. Okay, so that's the sugya. So right now we're holding, Rav holds that if it's a situation where a renter is going to use up his keren, you don't go ahead and do it. Mesivei. Okay, we had a concept, fellas, in Ezo Neshech called Mashkanta de Surah. It was called Mashkanta de Surah. I'm a malva. I lend money. To Ari Bacon, and I say, Ari, listen. I know it's a lot of money. It's $100,000, but I know you have a nice piece of land. Give me this land as a mashkin. I'll stay on the land, and every year we're going to deduct $10,000, and after 10 years, the loan will be paid up. I used to the Paris. That's called Mashkanta de Surah, the Mashkan Surah. Okay, it really works, right? He's happy. I'm happy. It works. So what happens if in the middle of the mashkin, all the payers are gone? What happens? So that's the discussion over here. And we're going to somehow ask a kasha on Rav, who says that we're not makal your karna. Okay, that's what we're going to end up doing, asking a kasha on Rav. Let's see the Gemara. Yave She'ilon, we have a mashkanta de surah, and I am going ahead and I am eating from this tree. Yave She'ilon, the tree gets dried up, or it gets cut down. Shnei Masurim, both me, the Malva, and Ari, the Lova, are asaboy. We can't go ahead and have a nut from the tree. Both of us cannot go ahead and use this tree. Why not? Why can't we go ahead and crack the wood or burn it, right? Because if the loiva burns it, if Ari burns it, then the money that I was going to get from the tree is out, and if I burn it, I'm not returning anything to Ari. Either way, in other words, it really belongs to Ari. Ari has the Kenyan goof. I have the Kenyan Paris. If Ari burns it, he's taking away my keren. If I burn it, I'm taking away Ari's keren. So Shnei Masurim. So Kate said, Yaseh, what should you do? You lokech ba karka. We should take the wood by karka, and there'll be v'hu oichel Paris. I'll eat the Paris, right? Now, what's going to happen to this karka in Yovel? It's going to go back to the original owner that we bought it from. Again, it's not Ari's karka. We took Ari's money, and the money that's going to eventually come back to Ari and buy a piece of karka. Yet in Yovel, what's going to happen? It's going to revert back to its original owner. Who's going to be out? Ari. It's going to be Kal Yakarna. Yet we see you could do this. Kashan Rav. Okay, one more time. Rav says the following. Rav says, we won't let you go ahead and take the dead donkey, sell it, and rent it because you're going to use up all the keren. So I'm going to bring you a case where we see the halacha is you could use up all the keren. And that's the Kashan Rav. What's the case that you could use up the keren? It's a case of a mashkanta de surah, where I go ahead, I have Ari, I lent Ari. Ari gave me his trees to use, and the trees got used up, and now they're not producing any fruit. Or they're cut down. All they're good for is wood. Okay, so if either one of us takes the wood, it's not good. Why? Because he'll be using up mine, and I'll be using up his. So what do? Take the wood, sell it, buy a piece of land from somebody, from Harry. Buy a piece of land from Harry. And I'm going to eat the Paris, and Ari owns the land. Good? Great. Comes Yovel, that land goes back to Harry. What's Ari left with? Nothing. Kal Yakarna. Kashan Rav. Keeping the mata Yovel. Once you get to Yovel, Kahodra Aro Lemara, we're going to give it the back to Harry. The Kal Yakarna. And we're going to be using up what? all the Karen. And Rav says, "Oh, what? You can't." But this is a brisa, right? Or it could even, right? Or could even be more than a brisa. I don't even see if it's a Mishnah. But whatever, it's definitely going to be. It's definitely going to be a loss to what? It's a brisa. Okay, it's going to be a loss. So, and for the Gemara, Hachamayaskinon, the Zabin Leila Shisin Shanin. We sold it for 60. That even the Yovel passes, it's not going to go back to Harry. Harry sold it for 60. Even when Yovel passes, so comes the Yovel year, Ari, it's not Kal Yakarna, and therefore we could do it. The Amarav Chista, Amarav Katina, Minayin Lamecha Sedeel is Shishim Shana. How do you know if you sell a field for 60 years, Sheina Chayzeres be Yovel, that it doesn't go back to the owner in Yovel? Shenemar, Ba'aretz Leisimachel it's Misos. The Aretz shouldn't be sold for forever. In other words, what we're worried about is the land should go without ownership. So we guarantee that the steyachus is going to go back to its original owner. So it shouldn't be sold forever to the person who bought it. Mishain sham yovel, it's not nitzmeses. When there's no yovel, then it's meses. Yesh sham yovel, and it's meses. Yatzazu shafa b'shein sham yovel, even though there's no yovel, right? Because it's 60 years, and it's meses. It's not going to be there forever, because 10 years after the yovel, then it's going to go back to the original owner. If that's your teretz, safe, l'chimati shisin shana kahodra ara lamara, the bottom line is all you did was put it in suspended animation. Then you avoided the inevitable. So it didn't happen in Yovel, but it's going to happen 10 years after Yovel, right? In a perfect year. In that case, Ari is going to be Kal Yakarna, back to the original question of Rav. At 60, it's going back to Harry, right? It's going back to Harry, yeah? And what does Ari get? Nothing. Kal Yakarna. Ella, what's pshat in this brisa? El hachamay askinon, bisman shein Yovel noyig. You know, it's never going back to Harry. It's always going to be in the hands of, he sold it to Ari, Ari's going to keep it. Harry sold it, Ari's going to keep it. Yovel's not noig. The Rishonim say also it could be speaking about even the Zman of Yovel in Chutz La'aretz. Yovel's not noig in Chutz La'aretz, so it can be speaking of Chutz La'aretz. Be another way, in other words, the way Rav would get out of this quandary is to go ahead and say that this price is speaking in a scenario where you don't have to worry about it being Kal Yakarna because it's going to go back to the Leiva. Because it's going to go back to the Leiva. In this case, it's Ari. I'm mistabra to say that what a proof that it's speaking where Yovel's not noyig. And in other words, according to where you learned that it's speaking about Yovel is noyig, and you could go ahead and be mechal your karna, according to Rav, then not tzlich l'tzivi v'nishkalei. Go according to Shmuel, not tzlich l'tzivi. Go ahead and cut it into chips and burn it. Cut it into chips and burn it. Right. So why? If in other words, if you're telling me that in Yovel's noyig and you worry about Kal Yakarna, so because the guy's going to take it back, so what do? Why do you have to wait till Yovel? Go ahead and use it up. Go use it for firewood. Ella must be that you're not worried about Kal Yakarna because it's speaking where Yovel's not noyig and it's going to go back and it's not going to go back. It says it's not a raya like kasha. Simnin the shomu shnei mashkanta mikama Yovel. Let's say Yovel's in the year 50. And the reason, and so you're saying it's Kal Yakarna, chop it up now. Maybe Ari will repay the loan before Yovel, and therefore Ari would have use of the land from the time he repaid the loan until Yovel. So of course you can't go ahead and chop up the wood. Of course you can't chop up the wood. Inami dematle zuze parakle arba chamisha shan mikam Yovel, or he paid up his loan. Either that the mashkin ran out, meaning the year 10 of my scenario ran out before Yovel, or Ari paid it up for Yovel. Therefore, you can't go ahead by that and cut up the land. Yeah.
Wouldn't the loan have been finished anyway because of Shemitah?
What?
Yovel is the 50th.
I wrote a henpeck. My shoyl bezdin. There's ways around it. You know, the henpeck. There's ways around it, right? My shtaros lebezdin, right? A bezdin a year when it's a 60 loan. That's what we said. It's not mishamet. It's not mishamet in that case because you have a star. You have a star on a loan. Could say it's speaking about a henpeck. Okay, we've been dealing with donkeys dying in the middle of the road, on the way. Now we're dealing with a ship. So you're sailing from New York to Buffalo. You're sailing up 287, right? Going but not on a Friday afternoon. Whatever you do, don't go sailing on a Friday afternoon. So you're sailing your boat. You rented the boat, the Tavala, and it got stuck in the Chveis. It got stuck in the Gowanus Canal. Like it sank. Okay, so it's stuck b'chatzei derech. So that being facetious. So in other words, you rented cargo. You're transporting wine, let's say, and you rented a boat, and the boat sank with your cargo. Now, there's possibilities. Is when he said, "I'm providing a boat." There's one or two possibilities: a boat or this boat. Vis-a-vis the wine, it's wine or this wine. Good. This is important because this is koyach hataina. So again, there's two possibilities by each one. You said I'm renting you a boat, or I'm renting you this boat, or I'm transporting wine or this wine. So now, if the boat sinks in half the way, Reb Nassan Omer, in Nassan, if the soicher paid the maschir, you can't take it back. So if you prepaid, you don't get it back. The imloy nasan, if you didn't give it, lo yitain. Now, according to Rashi, you don't give all of it; you just give the half that you used. Now, hechidami, ilema b'sfina zu v'yayin stam. If the renter told him this particular boat, and the balas svina said this particular boat, and the other person said yayin stam, I want to transport wine. In Nasan, if he paid up, why doesn't he get it back? Namely, let the soicher who said stam wine to the master that said this boat, havli svinasa, give me this boat, that I know my sin and chamra, that I can go ahead right and bring wine. Who, in other words, who has a bigger tiner over here? If this guy said, I rented this particular boat and I'm transporting my wine, no special wine, it sinks. Now you're telling me if I paid him, I don't get my money back. I have a tremendous taina. You told me this boat, I said wine. I'm here with wine. It doesn't have to be the wine that's at the bottom of the sea. It's any wine, because I said wine stam. You said this boat. Provide me this boat, and then I'll give you money. Since you can't provide this boat, I want my money back. And l'chayr, that's a better taina. Right? It's a better taina, because I'm willing to fulfill my part of the bargain. I said, yayin stam. Here's my wine. Look, I got wine in the sea. Forget that. Here, I got another pallet of wine over here. Take this. Good. So that can't be the case. Ella, it must be svina stam v'yayin zeh. It must be that what? Svina stam and yayin zeh. And we said, if he doesn't give, he doesn't have to give. 1 second. This guy said svina stam. What can he taina? Here's a boat. You said what? This wine. And you can't provide this wine. My koyach taina is better. I should be able to get my money. I'm willing to do it. Let the maskeh tell the seicher, havli ahu chamra, give me my wine, right? Because you said this wine. But I know my sin and svinasa, and I'll provide the boat. So why? So therefore, anytime it's a zoo, they have the winning taina. The one that says stam has the winning taina. The one who says stam, because again, svina stam or chamar stam, you can provide it. It's the one that says zoo that's a problem, because zoo is at the bottom of the ocean. Zoo is at the bottom of the sea, whichever body of water is. Amra Papa, lemishkachas Reb Nassan's din of if you paid up, you don't get it back. But if you didn't pay, you don't have to. Half. El besvina zu v'yayin zeh. In case of svina zu v'yayin zeh. Both can't go ahead and fulfill the condition. You both can't fulfill the condition. Why? Because this guy can't provide this boat, and this guy can't provide that, right? And therefore keep the status quo. So who's muhsik? So what again? So guys, if each one can't fulfill it, so you gave money, I'm being masik in the money, I'm holding on to the money. But if you didn't give money, then you don't have to give it because you're masik the money, right? That's the way it would work. If you paid the money, I'm masik in it, I don't give it back. If I didn't give it, I'm masik in it, I don't have to give it. So that's the case of Reb Nassan. Aval b'svina stam v'yayin stam cholkin. Case of svina stam v'yayin stam, where they both can go ahead, say, okay, I'm willing to go ahead, then cholkin. Let's see Rashi on that, guys. 3 lines down. El b'yayin zu b'svina zu, v'loy b'yad zeh v'zeh lahashlim. Neither one can fulfill the condition. Hilkach yad toiveya ala tachtoina. The one who's claiming has the lower hand. The amaleh heyachana loy makvana. I'm not being ma'ak of you. Mechimasisas didach. When you bring yours, you bring yours. You're holding on to the money, bring your wine. I'm holding on to the money, bring your boat. Good? And you can't. However, if you said stam, and each one can provide a boat, or each one can provide wine, then cholkin, im kibul yachzar chetzi. If he went ahead and he was makabel, he returns half, guys. Cholkin. In other words, this is not Reb Noson's din, right? This is if you gave the money and you said stam, you get half back. Vim loy nasan, and if you didn't give, then you have to give half. They both can go ahead and fulfill the condition. Okay, very good. More cases. You rent a boat and you stop at a port halfway. You rent it to get to one port B, and you stop at port A half the way, and you unload the boat. You pay him for half the way. And the Balas Svina, who thought he was going to port B, only has complaints. He only has pace on the Seicher. What exactly is the case? If he can go ahead, the Balas Svina in port A can find someone else to rent his boat. Why's he upset? So good. You thought you'd get a rental to port B. You're at port A now. You got a new rental. Why could you have any kindness on the Seicher? And if you can't find anyone to rent your boat in port A, then you should have to pay everything because he contracted out to port B. You could find someone. So why does he have tarumis? Mishum ravsita desvinasa. Rashi says, fellas, anytime you go ahead and unload a boat and load a boat, it goes ahead and it compromises the boat. It makes the boat weaker each time. So it's true monetarily, I'm not taking a loss because I could rent out the boat. But if you've gone ahead and kept your load on board, then you would have only loaded it once from port X where we began to port B. But now you stopped at port A and you're loading and you're loading and unloading the boat. That's going to cause a problem. Not only, again, it's going to cause a problem you unloading your stuff, and it's going to cause a problem the one I rented in port A to reload the boat, right? So therefore, that's why he has tarumis, even though monetarily he's not taking a loss. If that's the case, l'chayra, he's taking a monetary loss. He's being masakim. No, that's not tarumis, guys. If your boat is worth less as a result, that's not tarumis. Tarumis is where you have no choshen mishpat taina, right? You can't bring it to court. Lenny asked me the other day, for tarumis, would you have to go to court to create a scenario of tarumis? And I say, Pasha, not. You're not bothering bezdin. Tarumis means a taina. But once you bring it to court, in other words, I can taina, you cause my boat to be worth less. Of course you go to court for that. What are you talking about? So, Fred the Gemara, if that's the case that you're saying, it's more than tarumis. You really have a monetary complaint, and you should be compensated. Says the Gemara, so we're changing gears, guys. In other words, we thought that parka means unloading the boat. It doesn't mean that. It means loading more on the boat. Elamai parka, the parka letoine bigave. He goes ahead and he adds more cargo at the halfway point. Okay, here's what happened. They leave point X. Before they leave, and this is important, the Seicher tells the boat owner, listen, I want to know, I have X amount of, let's say 5,000 pounds. I want to know that I can add on more. Because no problem, you can add on more. No problem. They start off on the journey, and he thinks, the owner of the boat, they can go from point X to point B, not realizing that this Seicher is going to stop at point A and take take advantage of the condition that he made with him to add on to the 5,000 pounds. And now he's stopping at point A and he's loading on the boat more. Now, he can't have a monetary claim against them. Why? Because he agreed to the extra tonnage. He agreed to the extra weight. On the other hand, he could have tarumis. Why? Because he thought he was going from point X to point B, not realizing they're stopping in point A. And he figured, I contracted, I thought I had a non-stop flight, and I ended up being what? A stop. If you ever on a plane and they had to stop for whatever reason, I was once on a plane and they landed in Paris because Pat Boone was sick. I said, why don't you let him die? He was a lousy singer anyway, but again, they didn't listen to me. But Pat Boone was on the plane and we stopped because he was sick. Okay? It was a tirda. It was a tirda. Okay, so that's Geshmak. Elamai Pirka, the Parkle Tiny Begave. Elamai Tarumis, Mishum Shina Daite, because he thought he was going from point X to point B, not realizing he was stopping at point A. Inami, La Ashla Yisera, for the extra rope. Okay, Rashi brings. Yes, Yehuda. Yes, Yehuda.
Why isn't it the same taina of unloading and loading like it would be if he
Because he agreed to it.
He's putting the wear and tear.
No, he agreed to it. He agreed to more tonnage. That's why the whole sug is predicated.
He agreed to more tonnage or to more stops?
He agreed to more weight.
But weight doesn't necessarily mean a stop.
Yeah. That's what it means. The weight, it's the weight.
Okay.
Okay, so now it seems like this. If you have more weight in the boat, you have to take it farther to deeper waters because it's going to be, go deeper. It seems that to get them out, they need extra rope. I don't know exactly how it worked. So that's why he has tinus. That, had you told me, I would have bought extra rope, and he had to pay for rope. I don't know if he paid for it or the paying la ashla yisera for this extra rope. That was a tarumis. Next case. Tanabanan. Asaycha esachamar. Someone rents a donkey. Lirkov alecha. The one who rented it, again, this is taking up space on the donkey. He could bring along his clothing, he could bring along his bottles, his flask, and the food, derech. If the derech is 3 days, 4 days, he can bring food along for all 4 days, and clothing and drink. Anything more than what beyond 4 days, Chamor ma'akav, the owner of the donkey can be ma'akav. It's too much. Now, what about Chamor? Again, Chamor is the driver. There's two people over here. There's the guy who's riding on the donkey, and then there's or leading the donkey. I guess leading. He's not leading the donkey. He's walking along with the donkey, and then there's the donkey driver. What can he put on the donkey? Which is the fodder for the donkey. And the mizayin is for 1 day. So the obvious question is, the renter gets food for all the trip, and this driver gets only 1 day. Anything more than that, when the fodder for the donkey or the food for the chamar, then he can the seicha can be ma'akev. Hechidami. If it's able, you go ahead to what and buy food. Chamar nami la'akev. Why is he allowed to take food for the whole trip? The seicher. If you're telling me they could stop on the way at a McDonald's, right? So he can also eat at McDonald's. McDavid's, excuse me. McDavid's from Yidden. McDavid's. Okay. So they can eat at McDavid's. So in other words, just like we assume the Balach Hamor can find, if it's a 4-day trip, it must be he finds places to eat along the way. So the owner of the donkey, the renter of the donkey also should be able to only take for 1 day, correct? Why the whole trip? If there's no McDavid's, then then the seicha also should not be stop him from taking more food. So in other words, where is this inequity over here that the drunk driver gets 1 day and he gets the whole trip? Right? You're able to go ahead and find, but you got to know the ins and outs. In other words, you got to be a truck driver to know the best pit stops, where to go, But if you're a rookie, you're not finding it. Chamar the dracha lemitrach. Lav nav means from one inn to another inn, evening inns. Chamar the chamar derech lemitrach ulemizman. He knows the places. He can be matriach and buy the food. Therefore, he only gets food for a day. Sleicher, the guy who's renting the donkey, he's not used to being on the road. Lav derech lemitrach ulemizman. It's not the normal way, and therefore what? And therefore he can take food for. So we want to know the difference between the driver himself that only gets clothes for one day, and the one who rent him out gets clothes, food for one day, and he gets food for the whole trip, is because he can trouble himself to find the places to eat, and again he's experienced, whereas the one who rented Mistam is not experienced, and therefore we don't expect him to matriach himself to find. Next, Tanabanan. Someone who rents a chamor to ride on the chamor. Someone who rents a chamor to ride on the chamor. Ish, if it was rented to a man, leisirka v'laha isha. You're not allowed to put a woman on this animal. This is definitely the bloggable stuff. You're not allowed to put a woman on this. It's a little delicate. The Sma, the Pirush and Shulchan Aruch in Simin Shinches, Sif Aleph says Mishum Kfeda, because of heaviness. Now, we're all doing that. I'm not sure that's what it means. I'm not sure. I would go out on a limb and think this is what it means. In those days, women did not ride with their legs spread apart. They rode side saddle. And it must be riding side saddle, it weighs down more than if you spread it out. So I think that's what it means. I can't assume that in periods of life that women were heavier than men, which is the way that, some person might look at that sma. I don't think that's what it means. I think it means that the weight distribution, the way women would ride, was heavier on the donkey than the man. I think that's the shot. So if you rent it to a man, you cannot go ahead and rent the woman. Yes, Dr. Press.
So you wouldn't say she's got a ticket to ride and she don't care.
Okay, Dr. Press. If you looked at the bog lately, he's been a DJ. Okay, anyway. Okay. And this is being recorded. Anyway, says the Gemara. Okay, says the Gemara weiter. So, ish. You can't go ahead and you can't put a woman on. Isha, but if you rent it to a woman, if you rent to a woman, a man could ride it. And not only a man, but and if you rent to an Isha, whether it's a small Gedolah or a Katana, right? Then she also. By man, there's the Rashi Taisa says, Ish, we didn't make the distinction by man between Gadol and Katana. The Ishlay Ratzal Shanis ben Kadam ben Gadol, Mishum the Garvei Shchicha Shem Gedolim, Upshita that I think the Gadol Nami Igranele. In other words, men are it's a bigger man, so certainly a young, but women you never know. So very interesting. I found it fascinating. I remember the last time I learned it, I also found it fascinating. And I remember the Sma. I looked it up today, and again, he just says one word, Mishum Kfeda, and no one else says anything. But I just, in my gut, I think that's the pshat. Anyway, afilu mu'beres, even a pregnant woman, va'afilu meinika, and even nursing. Now, the assumption is if she's nursing, she has her child with her, and that it's going to be heavier than a pregnant woman. Says Gemara, Hashta meinika amra. You're telling me if you rented to a meinika, mu'beres miboy, you need to tell me that's it seems obvious because she weighs less or she rides a different way. See, this is the point where it has to do with weight. Over here, when you're dealing with a pregnant woman or you're dealing with a carrying a child, then it has very much what to do with weight. Okay. Amra Papa Muberes v'meinikut. Speaking about she's pregnant and nursing. Usually it doesn't go with hand in hand. Muberes v'meinikut. Amra Papa, Kama. It's speaking with even if she's pregnant and nursing, she can go on. Amra Abaya Shmamina. We see from here a little business acumen from Abaya. Binsa Akarsa Tikla. Fish is heaviest in its stomach. So I guess Muberis, when you're seeing that a Muberis could ride, even though she has a big stomach, there's a lot of weight. We can ascertain a lot of weight comes from the stomach. So if you see a fish, you know where the heavy weight comes from the fish? It comes from the stomach. Lamai nafkamina, what's the Abaya telling us? Lemeka chumemker. Says Rashi, the last Rashi, Lemeka chumemker, imra'isa dag, shekresa godol. If you see a fish with a big stomach, like tiknuhu b'mishkal, don't buy it by weight. Ella and Cain yoitzi esmeyav. Let them first go ahead on and cut it open and take out the intestines, and you'll get much, much more fish. Okay? Okay, wish everyone a good Shabbos. Feel good, everyone. Yehuda for Shalema.